Welcome to Ask and Learn.
For the radius of convergence, we'll use the ratio test to figure out which values of x are allowed. The ratio test will do limit as n goes to infinity of absolute value of an plus 1 over an, where an is this whole thing, including the x values. Okay, so once you plug these things in, we get some cancellations to occur. Would have a x plus 6 to the n plus 1 on top, but then we'd be dividing by x plus 6 to the n. So we would just end up with a x plus 6. And then we'd have an 8 to the n up top, square root of n plus 1 over 8 to the n plus 1, square root of n. Okay, so this is just from doing simple algebra here. Remember, our an terms is this whole thing, including the x values. If we're dividing by an, same thing as multiplying by the reciprocal. So the reciprocal of this thing, we're going to have an 8n on top, as we do, and we're going to have a square root of n at the bottom, as we do over here. 8 to the n divided by 8 to the n plus 1, that's just going to turn into 1/8. And then square root of n plus 1 divided by square root of n is square root of n plus 1 over n. As n goes to infinity, n plus 1 over n is 1. Square root of 1 is 1. So this is just absolute value of x plus 6 over 8. And we want for this to be less than 1, which is the same thing as saying that absolute value of x plus 6 is less than 8. So at this point, you could say that the radius of convergence is 8. And if you really want to be sure about it, if we have that absolute value of x plus 6 is less than 8, that's the same thing as saying that x plus 6 is trapped between minus 8 and 8. And if we have minus 8 is less than x plus 6, and we subtract 6 from both sides, we get minus 14. And if we subtract 6 from 8, then we get 2. So the length of the interval of convergence is 2 minus 14, which is 16. Radius of convergence is half of the length of the interval of convergence. So indeed, we get 8 as the radius of convergence. For the interval of convergence, we just need to figure out whether or not we include these endpoints here. So when x is minus 14, do we get convergence or divergence? So when x is minus 14, we're going to end up getting minus 8 to the n here. Minus 8 to the n is the same thing as minus 1 to the n times 8 to the n. So we'll get 8 to the n to cancel out with 8 to the n. And then we'll still have the square root of n thing here. The 8 to the n's will cancel, and we'd have this minus 1 to the n happening here. But these terms are not even going to go to 0, so we can't possibly have convergence. Square root of n blows up to infinity, so this for sure is not going to converge, so we get divergence there. So now we need to check the other endpoint when x is equal to 2. See what happens there. When x is equal to 2, if we plug in 2 here, we get 8 to the n. 8 to the n divided by 8 to the n will cancel out. So we'll just get the square root of n being summed up. And again, this certainly does not go to 0, so we can't possibly have convergence. So we'll get divergence there. So both of the endpoints we have to toss out. So this is going to be our interval of convergence.